Chris, can you monitor the chat? Or Katie, can you monitor the chat? Chris, can you monitor the chat? Katie's going to be presenting.
My flight's taken off in probably 15 minutes or so here, so I can for the first 10, but after that, I wouldn't count on me.
And I see Paul's on. Paul can do it.
I can do it. I can do it.
Can I have a different task, Mark?
Can you have a what?
A different task, just to feel like I'm contributing.
Can you grow a mustache?
I'll work on it.
All right.
Can you grow a mustache for me so I can have one?
Mustache hair donation.
I don't know if it works like.
That's the grossest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Paul, can you announce the finals refs today too?
Sure.
Thank you.
Give me a moment.
Yeah, just pull it up and ref up if you can. I guess I can.
I got it.
All right. We're gonna get cracking because our local basketball team is trying to go 0-2, and I'm sure people want to go watch that. So, not a lot of content today. We have a lot of referees out. Welcome everyone. Let's just see, who do we have? Pierce Mara, welcome back. We'll get you to the meeting. We'll get you to the email list again. Will is the only referee on that's taken the level 1. Will, how did you find the level 1 and the rugby carnival? You want to give some feedback on that? Or some thoughts on that?
I thought they were both really good experiences. I feel like I learned more about the game in the 2 days I did that, and then subsequently I did the blood, sweat, and beers tournament this weekend. And I feel like I learned more about the game of rugby and like how to officiate than I had ever seen being a player and or a coach.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's drinking from a fire hose, I'm assuming, for the first couple of months, but we just do what we can and enjoy it. Sorry, I gotta get back to my email. So, Brandon, we have some promotions up the different match levels. Do you want to go through that a little bit? Brandon on. He was on.
Yeah, sorry. Yep, I'm here. Yep. Just
Are you there? Sorry, Brandon, you there? Brandon Castro going once.
the heck, man.
There we go. Now we got you.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, what is going on? Y'all can hear me?
Yep, we can now.
Awesome. Okay. So yes, we did have quite a number of promotions over the last month. We do meet with amongst ourselves, the EC, talking to coaches, talking to people who have been able to watch others ref in tournaments. And we have 6 promotions actually over the last month. So we did say this to these people already, not a surprise to them, but to announce to everybody else. Ben Gus to Lucas Callis, Robin Blevins and Kyle Carnahan have been promoted to level 9. So congrats to them. And then Joe Olivetti and J.R. LaPierre to level 8. So those are promotions for the month, and congrats to them.
Great. I see Joe and Chuff. And did Robin go to CRCs or was it Noah? Noah? All right. I don't think Noah, are you on?
Yes, sir.
Great. Let's and also welcome Luis Acosta. Luis took the level 1 as well. Luis, you looks like you have video chat with you. But congratulations on becoming a new referee.
Come on.
So Noah, Joe, and Chuff, if you're on, you want to talk about your takeaways from the CRCs, what you liked, what opportunities were made for you, and would you go back?
Yeah, I guess I can go first. Overall, it was a good time, a lot of games. We worked in teams of three, so
Maybe it's my computer. No, are you there?
oh yeah, yeah.
So
Can you hear
a
me?
lot of games works in teams.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Maybe it might be me. It might be me, Mark.
Okay, well, we got you now.
Okay. So I guess this might it's I just had a error saying my internet's unstable, just like me. So um
I dated her
but yeah,
once.
overall it was good time. From a referee development standpoint, more so had to reach out to other referees just to ask for feedback. They said there were coaches there, but I never saw one. So just being proactive and then reaching out to other referees, asking, hey, can you watch my game and get feedback. But overall, it was fun, busy, and yeah, I definitely go back again.
Joe?
Yeah, pretty much agree with what Noah said, and also um, being able to get video on yourself if you're willing to sit down. And me and Chris Huff watched the game while we were on our way back sitting in the airport. So just to be able to sit down with somebody that is a high performance referee, just kind of critique yourself in the right kind of way, um, is it's just something you're not going to get, more often than not, just kind of repping around here. So it's worth the experience, even if it is a little bit exhausting by the third day. Even if it's not physical, it's maybe a little mentally exhausting, but it's worth it to go and do it. So I'd do it again. But other people deserve a chance too. So
Well, there's lots of opportunities out there. And let's see, Brandon, what was let's table this and we'll talk to Katie.
About I was gonna say about Vegas, yeah.
Yeah. Um, we'll talk to Katie and Brendan's got some learning points about Vegas. So Katie, how was your wet and windy, delayed experience in Houston?
It was a fun time. So we were at college finals in Houston. It was kind of a cool event because they had women's sevens on Friday and Saturday, and then 15s college men's and women's on Saturday and Sunday. So there's a little bit of crossover. I got there on Saturday, so I got to see a couple of sevens games and watch a 15s game, then go get changed out in AR for a 15s game. So Saturday was great day, tons of rugby, really hot as Texas is. And then Sunday, all the sevens people were gone, and it was just 3 15s games, and the first game kicked off on time, which is my game, which is great. I was happy, proud of us and Weather for working together. The next game got delayed by an hour and a half. And then the third game kicked off like 3.5 hours after it was supposed to because of all the lightning delays. So kind of a bummer to sit around in a tiny changing room the whole time. But all the games did go off, which was cool. So we got to play all those games and honor those traveling. And then I'll sprint out to the airport and get home really late. So I'm working off of 2 hours of sleep and a full day of work, but it was a good time. Like it's always nice working with like trained teams of three, people that I've worked with a lot and have relationships with. Like it's always easier to trust your ARs if you know them more. Um, Kind of a little plug for the pods that I might be talking about later. But just getting to know people in the society or even nationally, like if you're going to an event, talk to people. Like I know it can be uncomfortable to get out of your shell a little bit, but get to know the other referees because you'll feel more confident on the field when you're out there because you know who has your back.
So we got to watch Millie's game in the D1A final. And that's always a really challenging game. What are your thoughts on the last 20 minutes of that game about like how she absorbed the pressure and facilitated the game?
Yeah, that's a good question. Trying to remember, that was Saturday night. It was a really good game. She was definitely could tell a lot of back chat from players, but she was very good at absorbing it and kind of like just setting her clear, consistent standard. Especially the last 20 minutes of a 15s game, you are refereeing based on everything done so far and not throwing too many new things at them. And she was a very consistent referee. Her whistle tones are always great, like you know what's coming. She's very predictable in her refereeing based on everything else that has happened. And she has those captain chats when she needs to. Talks with the captains, lets them know this is what she sees, what behavior changes she needs to see. Again, a preview of what I'll talk about a little bit later. I admit I don't remember too much the ending of her game. But it was definitely a really close, hard fought game. I think the better team of the day definitely won. So she didn't overly insert herself into the game and facilitated good high level rugby without having the players like I feel like especially when I see a lot of like men's D1A teams or like high level men's teams can get really mad at each other and mad at the referee. And she was able to absorb that pressure, put pressure back on the teams to play within the law, and they played a great game.
Yeah, it was really well done. To like reach out and find only the really big calls that needed to be made. I know her ARs were working hard and sending her stuff, but she did absorb some of those and felt like, wow, it's not a big call for me to take. So that gets frustrating at times when you're sending a lot of stuff to the referee and they're not taking it. But just that's not to say like don't just like shrink into your shell and not send the referee stuff. Like it's ultimately their game to manage, and you're there to support them and have them. So we're always developing as ARs with communication. I noticed on the weekend that we could be, especially with sevens, we can be a lot more confident and clear and say less words instead of, I think a lot of the trend with that familiarity is that if I'm ARing for Joe and he knows me well, I can just go, yep, Joe high tackle. But if you think about it, it's like you got to get their attention. You come in with the comms, you use their name, Joe, give them a minute to like realize that I have a call coming in. I have a high tackle on red, penalty only. And then he can process that information. I think everyone's really quick to like, oh, I got that call. I got to send it in really way, and they just go, they click it and go high tackle, right? And from a referee not just having this voice in their ear, it's just kind of startling, and they're not really paying attention. So kind of get their attention, get them prepared for the calls, then confidently and clearly just give them the facts. Red, high tackle, penalty only, right? Or blue 7, never onside, and just have a clear, crisp, confident communication, and they'll likely be able to comprehend that as they're running down the field. Yeah, and then Brandon, you made you were part of international news. What is your learning takeaway from that incident? Or how did Vegas go? And then what is your learning takeaway on that incident?
Yeah, let's do the whole Vegas experience first, and we can go into that one. That's fine. So overall, Vegas was this is the Pacific Super Regionals, so they divide up the club. For those of you who don't know, like the club teams into 4 regions, and they have their playoffs to go to nationals. So I was in the Pacific region in Vegas. So there was men's D1, 2, 3, and women's D1 and 2. I was able to center for 2 matches and AR matches. I centered for a men's D3 qualifier. I centered for the men's D2 championship, and I was able to AR for a men's D1 qualifier and the men's D1 championship. So those were all really good opportunities, good experiences. Really good coaching throughout the weekend, mostly coming through Alexis Alfaro, Dylan, and Brian Curtis as well as management. Small group of us. It was about 14 total, as in like management, coaches, referees. There was 8 of us who specifically were meant to do centers and about 5 or 6 ARs. Very good experience though. It's nice to have a smaller group. We were able to really just blend together really well, work on the things that we were that Mark and Katie were talking about. Like a big experience for us is we all, as referees, typically are sometimes in isolated situations where we're alone in the center and we have a couple touch judges from some teams. But when you're with ARs, especially with ARs of that caliber of referees who you can trust their refereeing decisions, but still we're trying to, we all don't find ourselves in that AR position too much. And I think a big learning lesson this weekend was confidence and communication, and just kind of even your mentality throughout 80 minutes of the game, that we, as an AR, sometimes like 95% of the game, you're not really impactful until that 5% decisions needed from you. And that's where you need to be sharp the entire time, because when you are needed in that situation, it is a lot of pressure on you, and it helps you and the center ref and the team look really good. There's obviously a couple issues here and there where just some AR helpful situations, 50-22s, some athletic moves where balls were kicked into touch, but where the athletes were jumping from the field to knock the ball back in and keeping in touch, and then just trailing and seeing foul play sort of issues. So we've had a learning curve through the weekend, and we developed throughout the weekend, which was a good learning opportunity. Positive feedback from coaches. I have a lot of takeaways from it. I won't go into super details, but really happy about the opportunity. Just personally with the men's D2 game I think I did a really good job, humbly saying that. And it was a good opportunity. And then the big question from the weekend is, if you all are on social media in general, this probably is somewhere in the ether in any sort of rugby community that you're involved in online. So there was how do I say this the shortest way? There was basically a overturned match of a men's D1 qualifier because of how this happened was it was a tied game, announced as a tied game. The finishing play of that tied match was a drop goal. It went into overtime. Overtime was a golden try. Seattle was the team who won with the golden try. And they moved on in that moment. But it was actually under contest from on back, who was the opposing team. The score was incorrect. And after match officials, not us, a third party reviewed it, the score was indeed wrong. It was 45-40 at that point in time. And basically, as the center referee at the time was asked what the score was from the players, they were told that it was a tie match. And as you all can see, that's a really big issue, and especially the context of the game didn't make it any better, because what team would obviously it's definitely hurts to see that a team was going for a drop goal by 5 technically. So number one rule, it's in the law book as well. I want to say it's 5.6, 5 something, but the referee is to keep the score. So unless it is, I can't think of any situation for you all, like, just as a center referee, keep a scorecard. That it's always in your interest to have the score. I would say personally, even going to, and I think that there's sometimes misunderstandings that we're going to these higher level situations where it's qualifiers, playoffs, and you're there with a big group of people. I think for me, I've only ever not recorded score intentionally, and that's been centering at CRCs before, because it has been explicitly said that this group and this scoreboard is operating and this is your job. And I don't think that that's exactly what happened there. So yeah, I was an AR on that match, and again, I wasn't really keeping score myself either. I was kind of, when you are a center referee, it's definitely a lesson overall, like, or a part of that team. Like, more so, I think that if you're in those qualifying high level situations as a center referee, when you're discussing your expectations, when you're talking about touch, foul play, what kind of communications you want, you can talk about those situations too, that you can assign an AR a backup score. You can assign the other AR backup time on yellow cards. So if anything, it's probably a tighter ship that needs to be in those situations. So unfortunately, not a good look for us, not a good look for the tournament. And yeah, it was just a pretty big learning lesson that I know the center referee definitely won't forget, but I know as a team of three, like, keeping that in mind. I don't know if anybody else has any questions on that situation or comments, but
Even when we do like move on and progress as referees, and have the luxury of having recorders and tech zone managers, and even when sometimes there's a scoreboard present, and if there's a stadium jumbotron, that's even better. But we do have to be like conscious of, like, if you're not tracking the score on your right on cards, which we probably need to reorder again or deliver, or you have a white piece of paper. I know Steve Gore just asked a question like how people write their scores. Like, I used to put like a line for a try and then put like a T on it if they converted it, and an X for a penalty. But then my handwriting wasn't so good, and it folds up, and the pencil smudges, and is that an X or is that a T? So I just kind of keep like a running score. So 5, 7, 3, which is 10. So it's 5, 7, 10, 15. But then when you go back and like, how many tries was that? You're like, ah, shit, I don't know. I got to go back and do the math. So I know there's lots of apps like there's Running Ref, which is about $4 if you like an iWatch, that you can just click like try conversion penalty drop goal, and then it'll kind of do it. But then again, your watch is open, someone brushes up against you and scores a try for the other team, and you're not aware of it. So there's no possible perfect system, but it always is good to like backup time, backup score with an AR, or if you do have the luxury of using comms, at 20 minutes, check the score. Just want to confirm that 17-10, especially on those tight matches. I believe what had happened is there was an attacking team that committed an infringement, and the referee awarded a penalty against near in goal, to whereas that looked like a try, and I think they recorded it as a try. So again, I don't know who the recorder was, but if one team wasn't celebrating, I don't know. That's just a rumor I heard. It was like like, that's why we really, really, really teach whistle signal talk as your first progressing to get that habit. Is like, that hand comes out, but like, yep, come out to the 5 and redo that penalty against, because it can be no closer to the goal line than 5 meters, defending or attacking. So just kind of clear that up. I've it's very easy. Your try signal looks a lot like a defending penalty if you're not at the right angle, which is like why we want that penalty at a 45-degree angle and a try touching your ear, right? Those are all kind of tips and tricks.
Mark, can I make a recommendation as far as like how to use the running score?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I like to do a running score because it saves the time of having to do the math in the middle of the game, and then each line item is a try. So if there's a try, I just wait to write down an additional 5 or 7 points until after it's scored. That way you have the running score without having to do math during the game. If someone scores a penalty, I'll just write the running score and put pen next to it. But it's kind of the worlds where you get the running score as the game's going, and then afterward you also have an easy way to discover the number of tries in each.
Yeah, lots of experimental ways to do it. For sure. That's good.
Hey,
Uh,
Brandon, can I just confirm, was it announced over the loudspeaker or on a scoreboard with the scoreboards, or did they ask the ref and he said it was?
So, I mean, really, the situation was that there was no scoreboard, there was no announcers, there was no like field microphones or anything. Like you were just a spectator watching. We were mic'd up between Seth and ARs, and there was a two people at a table like keeping score / subbing, and this referee had the trust in that table to keep the score, and they fed the information to him, and then he fed that information to the player.
Okay. Ouch.
Yeah. So yeah, having those support match officials are great. And I think the lesson learned is you are sole judge of law and fact, and it's your responsibility as well.
Yeah. In your pre-match chats, like, or before a tournament, like confirm whose responsibilities are what, but you can never go wrong with keeping the score.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Let's see. Paul, do you want to talk a bit about what we got coming up with Mountain League and the summer tournaments?
Yeah, I'll talk about the high school finals, the season, the Mountain League, and a bunch of stuff. Well, first of all, this Saturday basically is the end of the spring season, and we had a really busy spring season. So first of all, thank you everyone for reading my constant emails asking for help. We had several weekends where we had upwards of 40 plus referee assignments out there. We didn't always cover all the AR spots, but fortunately we were able to cover pretty much all of the center referee spots. And I want to thank every single person that was able to, you know, raise their hand and put in bids and sometimes do multiple games per. So really thank you very much. I know the teams think that, and some teams even kind of were able to move around games just to accommodate all of the assignments we had. So fortunately it all worked out, but it's, you know, a constant struggle for Mark and I every week to kind of see what we can do to fill those out. This Saturday we have the high school finals. There are some other men's games going on, but to discuss the high school finals, everything's at Infinity Park. Some are in the turf and some are in the stadium. We have the Division II high school boys final, third place and fourth place match. The center referee for that match is Adam Price. This is at 9 a.m. at Infinity Park on the turf. With the ARs are going to be Lucas Callis and Ben Gust, and Paul Pettit as the substitution manager. Right after that game is the girls' third and fourth place match, and that is going to be center refereed by Robin Blevins, assisted by Delaney Kenyon and Brita. I need you to accept your bid in ref up for that if you're on the phone, or someone can remind her to do that. Substitution manager for that is Paul Pettit again. Then we have the high school boys Division I third and fourth place game, and that is also on the turf, and that's going to be center refereed by Brighton Malo, assisted by Freon and Art Bogus. And Art, if you're on the phone, I need you to accept your AR bid for that game. With BK or Brian Kelly as the, or sorry, not BK, who is the, yeah, BK is the substitution manager for that. And then going into the stadium, starting at 1 o'clock, we have the Division II first and second place game. And that is going to be refereed by Noah, assisted by Adam Price and Lucas, and Angela Bruno as the sub manager. And then we go in the first and second girls match, and that is going to be center refereed by Brandon and AR'd by Delaney and Brita. Sub manager is Dale. And then the high school boys Division I game, final game is center refereed by Mike Lawrenson, with Chuff and Chris O'Malley as ARs and myself as sub manager. So that is the high school state playoff finals weekend. We do have some other games out in Ref Up if you're looking for something. In fact, there's a new game that just came out, I'm assuming today or tomorrow or yesterday, the Water Dogs versus DU Men at Cook Park. If anybody's available at 5 o'clock to be a center referee for that, let me know. And it looks like we have pretty much everything else covered this week, which is great. So again, that's the end of the spring season.
Hey, Paul,
Yeah.
this is Dale and Angela. Neither one of us are available this weekend. We've got college graduation stuff going on. So we're
All right,
out
we'll
for the weekend.
And,
find other
I'm
people for
sorry,
that.
I was not ever aware that I was put on for this weekend. If I would have been aware, I would have let you know before now.
Okay, not a big deal. We can cover those.
Okay,
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
yeah,
We'll
no
reassess.
problem.
If you are free and want to do substitution controlling, obviously under that pressure of what we just talked about, maybe you're not going to want to do it, but yeah, we have some spots open. Before we get to the mountain stuff, so like it is kind of our end of a season. It was a really good hectic season, but I felt it's gone pretty well. A lot of referees have gotten some coaching thanks to our referee coaches, Mike Boyd, Jim Russell, Mike Hacker, and Joe Zevin and Paul Pettit. That's awesome. We had some kind of international rugby here, got some experience with that, had a lot of tournaments, had a couple of L1s. So here's my suggestion for, let's try to like make a big day of it. If you're not doing anything and you want to have fun, let's come and support our friends and stick around and have some pops and whatever. And then at the end of the day, after Mike Lawrence's final, Katie Roth is making her WPL debut over on the turf pitch. So that would not, everyone, let's go out and support Katie making her debut at this women's competition. And that'd be a good way. The weather's supposed to be 72 degrees, so that'll be a nice day for a change. It's not snowing on Colorado in the spring. So yeah, let's sit together and support Katie and celebrate the season with a little style, huh? Katie, what time's your match?
6 p.m. kickoff.
And who's supporting you on the line? It's Noah and Mike Lawrenson?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. No. Awesome. So awesome stuff, guys. I'm looking forward to Saturday. One of like what Katie was saying at the Houston event, these opportunities are kind of few and far between. Refereeing is very isolating. You usually just go out to yourself. You're by yourself. You go out, show up to the teams. No matter what call you make, at least half of the people don't agree with you. So it would be good and a good bonding experience as an organization if we could go out and force and get to know each other a little bit. I think we've done a lot better job of that this year, which is great. And yeah, and let's continue that trend. Paul, did you want to talk a little bit about the mountain stuff now? Sure.
So historically, for those that don't know, we do have a mountain league this year of Steamboat Springs, Vail, Grand Junction, and what's the other one? And Aspen. So obviously it's anywhere from a 1.5, 2-hour drive to 4-hour drive to get to all of these places. As you know, with most of our games, you guys are usually reimbursed for mileage over 50 miles. But when you're talking a round trip game such as Steamboat Springs, that's almost 400 miles, we're talking about a lot of money, and that's a lot of money to the clubs, a lot of money that ultimately historically has come out of our pockets. Many years ago, these mountain teams had people on the team that like either were in development management of hotels and they would put you up in a place, but unfortunately those days have gone by the wayside and they just don't really offer that anymore. So in trying to kind of create a little bit of parity in how much we sacrifice as referees, both as the individual referee, but us as a society, because we are the ones that pay your mileage for the most part. Every summer is a big losing money proposition for us. So we've renegotiated with all the Mountain League teams to charge them roughly $250 a game, of which all of the money goes to the referee, no mileage. So if you get a Mountain League game, then you're getting $250 for that game. You can, make a weekend out of it or whatever you guys want to do. The lodging is kind of all on you. Maybe you can find someplace cheap up there. But regardless if it's in Vail, Grand Junction, Steamboat Springs, or Aspen, you'll get $250 for that game. You get what the teams are paying. So we're not, we as a society aren't making any money, but we're also not losing upwards of $150 a game or more either. So hopefully that's a good incentive. The other thing to consider in regards to the Mountain League teams is that, obviously you see these teams in Ruggerfest and Cow Pie and Ski Town, and they're pretty competitive games. They're along maybe more kind of a D2 men's league game. They tend to recruit a lot of college kids and sometimes a lot of international players to come work and play over the summer in these mountain towns. And so they are pretty competitive matches, and they've requested level 7 and above referees, if at all possible. So many of you may not see these games in Ref Up, unfortunately. If we do have a hole, which right now I'm not seeing too many, then we'll open it up. But if you're interested in going up and you happen to be up there, then you can always look in Ref Up or on the schedule and see those games. That what I'm saying right now does not necessarily pertain to the tournament, such as the Cow Pie Classic and Steamboat or the Ski Town tournament. We are going to open those up a little bit more to other referees, because those tend to be a little bit more social tournaments, and we need a lot more referees for those occasions. So Cow Pie will be July 6th. We're still working on things as far as lodging is concerned. They're hoping to get that sorted for us. But we actually have 8 bids out there when we only need 6 refs. So it looks like it's going to be full, but it's always a good time. And then Ski Town is at the end of July. And then, of course, we have Ruggerfest in September, which we'll talk more about probably at our June meeting or something like that. But for those that are interested, it looks like we have quite a bit of interest already. But that's kind of how the Mountain League, at least for the next, hopefully, few years, will run. And hopefully it's enough incentive to get you guys up into the mountains, and it makes it worth your time, because I know driving up there can be a pain. Are there any questions or concerns about any of that?
Do we know where Ski Town's going to be here?
I think it's in Vail. Ski Town's in Vail,
Maybe.
July 27th.
And this year,
Yeah, I have a question. This
Right.
is Angela. I have a
Sure.
question on those dates. If you could please send me those dates so that I can put a recap in it. I'm just thinking that if people or whomever, it sounds like you have some people already kind of zoned in for that. But if it is going to go on Ref Up, or if it's something that somebody might be thinking in their head that they would like to participate in, I think it would be nice to have the dates on there so that if they're looking for lodging, they can do that ahead of the game.
Yeah, I can send you out their schedule.
Thank
Also
you.
in Ref Up, for those that can see it, Grand Junction still has yet to put in their form of payment. So some of their home games aren't in the system yet. So what's out there now is not all inclusive. I know there's a game on June 15th and some other ones too. So it's almost full, but it looks like we have quite a bit of response here. But yeah, Angela, I'll send you that schedule.
awesome, good stuff. And, let's see what else we got. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yes, you're right. I mean, we just relate to Aspen being Ruggerfest, right? So, Paul, what are the dates for Ski Town? End of July, you said?
Yeah, July 27th for Ski Town, July 6th for Cow Pie.
And it's the 50th anniversary for Cow Pie. So, and I don't think it's going to be at the same location as it's been before, which was right next to the pickleball courts, to my dismay. But they have found a new field, but I don't know where that is. So Angela, real quick, if you
It's
wanna-
called Emerald Park.
so Cow Pie is July 6th at Emerald Park in Steamboat.
Yep.
Ski Town is
Steamboat.
July 27th in Vale. And then obviously the Rugger Fest is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 23rd to the 27th, in what will likely be a rainy weather this year, because it's late. Well, you always want Rugger Fest on the 17th, and then that's the sunshine. When you get on the 23rd, that's the sloppiness. We're still trying to figure out the logistics. I know a change this year is Aspen is allowing or inviting college sides. So there'll be a college division, which is great because that'll allow for another tier of games that maybe, our 7s, 8s, and 9s can do, which is awesome. I've been talking to all the colleges this weekend in Houston. I'm like, hey, you should enter a team into Aspen Ruggerfest this year, like Stanford and Harvard and whatnot. And so that'd be great. St. Mary's, it'd be great to have St. Mary's come in and do that. Before we get into the pods refresher, there's a summer sevens. We're gonna have probably 3 qualifiers for that. I don't know the dates of those just yet. We'll probably talk to that a little bit in June. And then there's usually like a kind of a kickball type league for summer sevens that's been at Coach Jacobs Park recently. It's usually done on a half pitch, and it's just a good stretch your legs and kind of get introduced into sevens in a phone booth a little bit, but a little bit of a fun time there. So we'll have that. That's usually on Wednesdays, I think. And yeah, and then before Katie talks about the pods and her referee escalation, one of my biggest soapbox items is for refereeing and officiating is accurately playing advantage. And tomorrow night on the Rugby and Laws Committee monthly development meeting, Jamie McGregor is going to talk about how to facilitate a match and advantage. And I think, like, out of all the things they put out, this is a can't miss. So it will be recorded and it will wind up on the learning database in Docebo, which is our online learning platform. Whereas for those that just took the level 1, that's where you can go back and register for level 1. But you can also retro back and watch all of these kind of webinars if you go into like how you would go to USA Rugby, click on register, you log into what is that? You log into Rugby X, and then you log into Docebo, which is the hosting, and where scroll down courses, you can see there's about 25 online courses. So there's lots of content out there, but I've also have this link. I sent this link out to everyone, with the exception of Pierce. We'll add you to it. This may be the link that I get since I've registered. So if you click on it, we're gonna have 1,000 Rocky Mountain Rugby referee accounts on there, but that's fine. It's gonna be a lecture-based series, and I think it's one not to miss. It's at 7:00. 7:00 tomorrow night. So let's all try to tune into that. And with that, Katie, you want to talk a little bit about the pods and how we can
Yes.
boost our utilization of that program.
Yep. So it was definitely a lot of front work in setting that up. And I admit I've not had a whole lot of time to follow up with pod leaders. And from what I can tell so far from the feedback I have gotten is we will get out of it what we put into it. So both pod leaders and if you're in a pod group, which should be every active referee. For my new people that just took the L1s, I'll get you in a pod soon and get you connected with that. It's location-based referee groups. So I know JR and I are both in Northern Colorado group. And part of that, like I alluded to earlier, is you can trust the people you work with if you see them more often. And if you live closer together, you're probably more likely to take assignments together. So the more you can get to know each other outside of rugby, or even the more you show up at each other's games, the better you can work together. So the pods are designed to be a streamlined way of communication. I know my group, I've had a couple questions. Again, shout out to JR. I know you've had at least 2 or 3 of them that you've sent my way and I've sent out to the group. So it's a great way for referees that are working on developing and getting better, or just anyone that has a question to have a specific resource to ask. Like, you know who you're going to ask to answer those questions. And then other people can learn from that. And then with that, pod leaders are theoretically working on development for the groups as well. I say that as a pod leader, not done a whole lot of that yet. So I can reach out to those pod leaders on some recommendations and some ideas of what we can do to get some more engagement with our groups and to get some development outside of these monthly Rocky Mountain meetings. So again, if you're not in a pod, you can drop me an email at recruiting at Rocky Mountain Rugby Refs. You can put that email in the chat or send it out in the post meeting link as well. Send me an email if you're not in a pod. Let me know where you live, just general location. You can say like, I live in Aurora, and I'll put you with the people that live close to there. So in general, way to answer some questions, get more specific development, and hopefully meet up outside of meetings. I know, like today, it's hard for me to get down to Denver because I live an hour and a half away, and I landed back in Colorado at 2 a.m. last night. So it's can be a lot of driving for some of us, especially at this time of day. So the pods hopefully can be a way for us to meet up outside of it and not have to Denver if that is far away for you. Do I have any questions on pods, either from the room or in chat?
No, it's a great program. And it really does help. There's really no stupid questions, right? Like none of us feel like as leaders of that, like we've all been through it. We wish we had it when we were coming up. Because you don't want to basically go on the calls and on the Wednesday night calls for D1A and Naira and just kind of maybe you're timid and you don't want to ask in front of all the world about, what is the referee the sole judge of again? When we have this, this resource of the pods and kind of tribal learning and close to home. So great stuff for that, Katie. Also, I've seen a couple people on the D1A calls. There will be one more D1A call to cover the final. That'll be on Wednesday night. Millie probably won't be on the call, but we're just going to talk about like finals type games and pressure and kind of what we kind of talked about a little bit. And then that'll go away until the fall again. I know Katie will have Amanda's WPL calls, which are all recorded and put up on Amanda Cox's YouTube page. So you can retro back and watch some of those and listen to some of the calls. So there's so much stuff out there for development. There's Advantage. Basically, you can Google anything on YouTube and say, I want to learn about referee positioning or how to talk to management, or if you want to learn how to be funny during a match, you can watch Nigel Owens clips, like whatever. There's a ton of information out there. Has anyone been struggling with or getting into Advantage or not being able to get videos? It's such a massive resource for you to use Advantage, the referee review software. And with this summer, getting some of these summer matches in there, we have a little time. I know we've been basically going with our hair on fire the spring with 40 appointments a week, for 3 or 4 weeks. And a lot of us traveling for national opportunities. It's a little bit tough, but we are through the toughest part of the year for Rocky Mountain, and a big congratulations for everyone for helping us get through it. So with that, Katie's going to do a presentation on escalation, referee escalation. Yeah, if you want to share your screen, I think I can allow that.
Yep, I will try and do that. Share sound, optimize for video. All right. Can y'all see that so far?
Yep.
Am I muted? Okay. All right. So we're gonna talk about escalation and repeat infringements. Yes, this is technically a level 6 competency, but I think all can benefit from it as well. And just learning some of the thought processes at higher levels, and also if it happens in your game, how can you help your center referee with it? I know, so if you're an AR, some referees might ask you to help keep track of penalty trends. I know I do that with my ARs. I say, are there any trends you're not seeing? And I give them specific points, like at halftime, I'm going to ask you for trends. Maybe if I'm standing next to it, a line out, I might ask briefly, like, how is our space doing? How are things like that? So as an AR, you can help out your center referee if they're asking for that, or just own little development as well, like knowing what's going on in the game. So in general, we're going to talk about what is trends, what is repeat infringements, what are those types and those buckets, what is the escalation process? Once you notice a trend, what do you do with it? And then a couple of examples actually from this past weekend, which was really cool. I knew I was going to present about this, and then it happened in 2 of the games that I was working on this weekend. And again, just to kind of recap real quick, why does it matter? Like, even before we get started, why is it important to do? Like, as we are refereeing, we are setting the standard to let the players decide the play. So by the calls we make and we don't make, we're telling the players what parameters they have within the law to play and how we're going to officiate that game. So a lot of the trends in escalation is calling out areas that need a change in behavior. If you are telling them there's issues at the breakdown, so saying you're off your feet, tackler's not releasing. If you're saying that with words and they're not complying, you can use your whistle. If they're not complying to your whistles and getting penalized, then we might need to go to cards. And again, we'll talk more about that throughout this presentation. And in general, being aware of what you are calling and being consistent with that. The biggest feedback I've gotten from players across levels is that they tend to love referees who are consistent. So be consistent in what you're calling, what you're not calling, both throughout the whole game and to both teams. With repeat infringements, repeat specifically means it's the same infringement or same type of it done again and again. Intentional infringements, so like cynical play and single instances of foul play, are separate. If it is a high tackle with direct contact to the neck and high force, that's going to be a red card every day. Doesn't matter how many other high tackles have happened in that game. So intentional infringements, things that are always foul play, are different than repeat infringements. So we're not going to worry about that. So this is just about what is repeat infringement. So first question is, what is a trend? So if you're in person, talk with some people near you. If you're in the chat, you can drop it in the chat as well, like if you're on Zoom. What do you think a trend is? Pretty open question.
Multiple infringements? Multiple infringements at the same time, like tackle not rolling away, or breakdown infringements, and then what would be an example of like an infringement getting worse? Going over the ball, almost down, but way up. So like kind of maybe one hand down, hands on the ground, elbows on the ground. Yeah. Okay. And then definitely with high tackles, right? No wrap with direct contact, high degree of force. Yeah, escalation.
Sweet. Seeing and hearing a lot of good things so far. So like doing multiple of the same type of infringement. So far, people have called out offsides, high tackles, repeated back talk. So in general, trends can be an individual player. Maybe the same person is committing just a bunch of penalties. Maybe it's the same person who's doing a bunch of high tackles. And then across team, similar infringements. If there's a bunch of breakdown penalties, if there's repeated foul play, a big one people might not always know of is giving away a lot of penalties within your defensive 22. So that red zone that you hear players and coaches talk about, if you're giving away a lot of penalties in that can also be a trend. And JR said in the chat, negative attitude or frustration. So a lot of these can be trends. If you need help identifying trends, here's a couple questions to ask yourself. Are we having problems getting quick ball at the breakdown? So have we had tackler not rolling penalties? Are we getting a contest at the tackle? Like, are there turnovers? Are you letting that happen? Are they just a giant mess? How can we clean that up? How can we add more definition to it? Is there space for players to attack? Have there been a lot of offsides, PKs? And are we getting good set piece outcomes? So we had, is the ball coming out? Are there issues in the scrum and lineouts? Have we had penalties and free kicks? And things like that. So if you're thinking, man, what is a trend? Are we getting quick ball? We're getting a contest. Is there space? How are our set pieces? So with that, we talk about 5 categories of trends, or kind of it's easy to think about it an analogy of a bucket. So there are different buckets of trends that you have to keep track of. And we've already said at least 3 of them. So what other buckets of trends? What would be, yeah, so what are some categories of trends that we think? So Mark can help facilitate in person. And if y'all are on Zoom, what buckets of trends are there? There are 5.
Outside is a trend. So taking away space.
Yeah.
That'd be a
Okay.
trend, right? What else on? So slow ball, breakdown infringements, right?
Mhm.
Well,
We have offsides and breakdown. Yep, so at the ruck, a lot of times we're looking at the defense.
foul play, right?
Mhm.
About like where we're located. Yeah, near in goal, like continued penalties near in goal under pressure, right? And what would be the last? I don't know if I know the last.
I think we got 4 of them.
Actually, oh, one of them deliberate infringements?
Yep. So we talked about deliberate infringements are different.
I don't know the 5th one then.
Yep. So the 5th one, at least that we talked about in the level 2 referee course I took, is scrums. So look at defense at the breakdown. So 4 penalties can go into that one bucket, bucket. So not releasing, tackler not rolling, off feet or side entry. So gonna the defense being disruptive at the breakdown. We have dangerous tackle and kind of foul play in that. Again, a couple different examples of dangerous tackles can go into that. If it's dump tackles, if it's high tackles. And again, some of those might be yellow or red cards by themselves. So when we look at dangerous tackle, we kind of look at high tackle, anything that's on the neck or slips up, but wouldn't necessarily be a yellow card by itself. If you have multiple in a game, that is still a trend that we can escalate. We have defensive offsides, scrum. So are they collapsing? Is it standing up? Is it not pushing straight? Is there one team consistently disrupting at the scrum pieces? And then the red zone within the 22, close to the goal line. Typically that one, especially, you're looking at a similar time frame of penalties. Looking at when the defense is under pressure, are they giving up a lot of penalties? And that's one of the biggest ones I have examples for tonight. Tricky thing when refereeing, you have these 5 buckets and you have 5 buckets for each team. And as the game progresses, you can have multiple different things happening at the same time. So maybe you're keeping track of 4 different buckets, 2 for one team, 2 for another. It can vary throughout the game, so it can be kind of tricky. So this is where you need to remember what penalties you've called and kind of just keep a tally of that in your head, get a general sense of it. Some of these, it's a little bit easier to tell. I think honestly, the red zone bucket for me is the easiest. I know if I've just given 3 defensive penalties in a row, we need to change something. So with that, we need to intervene. Blowing a penalty, that's the first way we can intervene. But if the penalty is not changing the behavior, if teams are still doing it and we have a trend, we need to do something. Some of the biggest things we think about is, are we intervening too early, too late? Are we intervening when it's not needed? Or are we not doing anything when we should be doing it? So this process should hopefully clear up some of these questions. So step 1, identify a trend. You have seen that the blue team has been offsides 3 penalties within 10 minutes. So if you're noticing this trend, if you have an easy opportunity to have an informal heads up conversation. So the first step, identify the trend. Step 2, talk with the captain, a little bit more of an informal conversation. And I have some examples on what that can look like. If you have that informal conversation and the trend continues, so they have another offsides after you just warned the captain, hey, we've had some offsides. Then you need to give a formal chat, a final chat. And this is your actual warning. So you are saying, if this trend continues, there's going to be a yellow card. And if the trend continues, step 4 is a yellow card. If there's repeat infringements with no behavior change after they've been warned 1 to 2 times, it's time for yellow cards. So when you give that heads up final warning, step 3, you assume that teams will change. You assume that if they keep giving away those penalties, it's going to start being yellow cards. If they change it and stop giving away those penalties, then it's good. Like, you shouldn't go hunting for that next one. It should stand out to you. Like, you've given them a final warning. You've put the pressure on the teams to change their behaviors. But at the same time, like, don't be waiting to, don't be eager to card. Like, wait for the teams to have that opportunity to change behavior. So getting specifically into each step, the heads up, I call it the informal warning. What you're looking for is a downtime. This is not the time to take the clock off and talk to the captain. This informal warning should just happen kind of between things, a lot of time at set pieces. So if it's a lineout or a scrum and your captain is right there, mention to them that there's been several offsides penalties. Can you address that to your team? Or there have been 2 tacklers not rolling. Clean up what it looks like at the breakdown, or get your tacklers out faster. Another good time for it, I think the time I talk to captains the most is after a conversion as we're running back to center field. As long as they're not trying to take the kickoff quickly, you can quickly chat with the captain and be like, hey, I'm seeing this trend. Just be aware of that. Start changing behavior. Right now, it's not a whole lot of pressure. If the trend doesn't continue, then good. Like, you don't need to move on in this process. If the trend does continue, is when we move to the next step. So with that, we're going to go to a video clip. Some context for this, we just had 3 penalties. So there's not necessarily a cut and dry, 2 penalties informal, next penalty formal. Like, it can be a little flexible. For this referee, her threshold was 3. So had a red tackler not releasing, 2 minutes later, had red tackler not rolling, 2 minutes later, another red tackler not rolling. So she takes the next stoppage. The other team chose a scrum, and during the scrum, the captain was 8. Referee talked to number 8 on what it is. So I'm going to show that communication. If you can't hear it that well, I've also kind of transcribed what she says here. So hopefully this video goes good. All right.
Whole lot of space for the women in purple on the edge. It could be a foot race to the corner. Instead, stepping back inside.
We are still playing in slick conditions. It is okay to tighten up.
And Stanford very
So this is the
aggressive
third
at that
penalty.
defensive breakdown. Penalized a couple of times there now in their own 22 though.
We're seeing a decent amount of not rolling penalties right now across both teams. So there could be a chance where the ref brings in both captains just to clear up
So
that
ironically, the
conversation.
announcers are also picking up on the trend that's happening are expecting something to happen. So let's hear what the referee does.
And we see a replacement onto the field early for GCU. That's Malia Stewart.
So I'm going to play that
Looks like
one more
coming-
time, just that little clip of 20 seconds, see if we can hear what she's saying.
Brings in both captains just to clear up that conversation.
And we see a replacement onto the field early for GCU. That's Malia Stewart.
Okay,
Looks like
so back to slideshow. So she said, we've had a couple of infringements down here within the 22. We need play to be better. The captain was wondering if it was at the scrum or breakdown. Referee clarified the breakdown. So with that being specific, but also just your general warning so far, I've noticed that there's this trend of infringements at the breakdown, especially within the 22. So right here, we're kind of the two different buckets. We're putting into the breakdown bucket and putting into the 22 bucket. Questions on this informal warning so far? Cool. So if play continues and there is no change, we need to up our escalation process. So the next step, if my slide will move. Yes. So next step is your final chat, your formal warning. So this is where you will take time off, pull the captain aside. It makes a little bit more of a spectacle. As soon as you call that time off, everybody focuses on the referee. Now the attention is on the referee. What are they going to do? The audience, if they know how this escalation process works, are expecting either the formal warning, so the last warning, or a yellow card. So think about where you are at. Don't call a captain out. Don't do time off if you're not at a yellow card warning. So this is different than the heads up. Heads up, informal, the audience might not even know that you have that conversation unless they can hear what the referee is saying. But this, everybody can see, referee is warning the teams that if there's not a change in what's happening, there's going to start being consequences, even worse than there have been. So it's the final chat because you won't be talking about it again. It should be obvious to everyone what the next step will be. With that, be specific. Be specific on what the trend is you're addressing. If this trend continues, you'll lose a player to the bin. If we are giving away more penalties within the 22, there's going to be a yellow card. Some people think that it can be backing yourself into a corner. That's why we're going to focus more on the trend than say the next one is. So you can give yourself some wiggle room and say, if the trend of being off feet and not rolling at the breakdown continues, there will be a yellow card. As opposed to saying the next off feet will be a yellow card. That's a lot more of a solid line, really backs into a corner. So have more of a trend focused outcome of if this trend continues right now, we will escalate. With that, there can leave some wiggle room on time that we'll get to in a little bit. But in general, it's clear that if there is not a behavior change, we're going to escalate our consequences with a yellow card. So we're actually going to continue this clip because it's not too much later that the formal warning comes. So we just had our 3 penalties in 4 minutes, all breakdown penalties within the 22, just gave the informal warning. And now we're about to have a penalty advantage for offside. So continuing on from here.
coming on to play on the wing. Replacing number 11, Grace Carrillo. GCU, another scrum in a great attacking space. The ball comes out the back. And we go wide. It could be a foot race to the corner. Washington High makes the tackle, helped by McKay. A couple of passes into the midfield, and it's Chloe Williams now splitting the Stanford defense in the center. Schrock running back towards the breakdown. The arm is out for the Lopes. They will have a free crack at the try zone now.
Stop yelling at me.
Good tackling so far from the Cardinals in the danger zone as Schrock is brought to ground. GCU all lined up on the left side of the field. No numbers right of the post. They're getting closer. The power game going to work for the Lopes. Can she get it down in the corner? Just short. Now GCU will change the direction of play and the ball is lost, but we had a penalty advantage that we will go back for. Referee just trying to remember where that mark was.
Right here. Thank you. Number 2 offside.
That was offsides being called against Riccioli.
Okay. Is too many penalties in the 22 now? The next
Ref just giving a warning here about the number of penalties that are occurring on Stanford's side. Typically, when you are getting consistent team penalties, if a card is drawn, it will be awarded to the
Okay, we're gonna
captain.
ignore what the announcer was saying at the end there. But in general, what was happening there is just had those 3 penalties, gave the informal warning. Red is still under pressure within their 22 and is giving away another penalty. Even though it's not a breakdown penalty, it's still the 22 under pressure, so it still goes into that bucket. And the referee was like, hey, that's my threshold to go to the next step and have a formal warning. So she was saying there have been too many penalties now in the 22. The next one's going to be a yellow card. Make sure our discipline is up. So again, her and I talked after this match on how we want to phrase that formal warning. And that's where some of our instruction has been to not paint yourself quite into the corner with the next one's going to be a yellow card, but more of a, if this trend continues, it's going to be a yellow. But in general, she got the message across that I just warned you about the trend. It's still happening. Now we're going to get to card that happens again. So questions on this next formal warning?
Questions here? Thank you.
There's a question?
No. In the
Nope.
chat?
Okay. All right. So thankfully, at least in this match, Pink was able to, I think, then score. So Red was able to clean it up, not need to get to that yellow card. If we are continuing in the escalation process, you know, it is still the next relevant penalty. So if it is an offside in the center field, that one doesn't matter because it's not within the 22. This yellow card warning was for penalties within the 22. So, but it's also, you have given the warning. If they were to give away another penalty within the 22, she would be pulling out a card. At that time, if you're going to card, you don't need to do the full formal process of calling out the captain and card it. Everyone should know that, man, she's blowing her whistle, that whistle, it's going to be a card. Little to no conversation needed. She just warned them. They did it again. Here's our card. There can come in the question of, what if it's a 50-50 call? What if they were marginally offside? Should you blow it in the first place? If that penalty is 50-50, is it card worthy? Is it really going into that bucket? Be sure that if you're going to that penalty, you are following through with that consequence of the yellow card, or you're sacrificing your credibility. But if like it happened in this game, the trend goes away, how long until we reset? This one, all the penalties are within 4 or 5 minutes. Definite trend of them being under pressure. But the game time was, I think, 30 minutes into the game, if my computer is agreeing with me. Yeah. Game clock.
While it's not typically them,
Get that penalty goal.
get some points on the board, no matter how.
It was near the end of the first half. So end of the first half, Pink is able to get some points on. Red does not commit any more infringements, so they don't need to be yellow carded. Going into halftime, you can buy yourself a little bit of wiggle room. So what's going to happen next? How long until we're resetting this? So continuing in our next clip, I'll jump ahead in time a little bit. That last 8 minutes, like I talked about, Red defended without infringing, Pink was able to score. So Red fixed it. They were able to use the consequences of the pressure of if this trend continues, will be yellow carded to change their behavior, which is what the referee wants. Now the players are back to deciding the game, and the referee doesn't have to insert themselves. And even if they did insert themselves with a yellow card, the players had their chances, they had opportunities, they were still doing the same things.
Katie, can
Halftime occurs.
you scroll up previous page and have this one reloaded? It's a little jumbled.
Yep.
Just click between slides and see if it reloads.
Sorry, which one are you looking for?
Now go. So what page? What? Go down one now. The one you were just on. Here we go.
Yep. Yellow card.
Next one. Yeah, in this
Yep.
mode. Let's keep it in this mode. There we go. Here we go.
Okay. Yep. Yep. This is going to be the next clip that I'm talking about. So in the situation, we're at the formal yellow card warning. So Red has the pressure of if we infringe again, it's going to be a yellow card. But 8 minutes happens. There's nothing. It's halftime. And now we jump to 60 minutes in the game. So now 20 minutes into the second half. And it's been a relatively clean game. The pressure is away from Red because there's been 20 minutes of positive play. But now Pink is stringing some phases back together and driving into the 22. So I'm going to play about 2 minutes of this video where we'll see two penalty advantages, and what the referee does with that. There's been that time. So is she going to go to the yellow card? Is she going to warn? What is her process looking like? With the time that's happened, a little bit pressure is off the team. So she's just going to go with a warning again instead of fully escalating to the yellow card. Because a lot of times what you want to think of in this instance is what decision makes sense. They got warned. I mean, currently from the video game time, it was 45 minutes ago they got warned. Does anyone remember that warning happened? So the referee kind of gives it another chance based on the positive behavior and fixing the trend. So instead of jumping straight to the yellow card, it's a pretty quick warning. So we're going to watch what happens and hear, and again, I'll recap what she's saying.
Meters short. GCU working to an outside shoulder. There's a little bit of space there, and it closes. Dykes shifts the ball away to her back line. Going out to the right. The space was there, but the pass is dropped. And I believe time is off to regather the lost shoe, and maybe there's a conversation to be had between the referee and their assistant. No, I'm sorry, we had a penalty advantage. That is what we are going back to.
GCU going to bring on a few more subs here. Hopefully they'll add to the energy. We have number 23, Cyan Callier, coming on, as well as number 17, Lucia Pogue.
So I know it got a little bit clipped. I should have started earlier. The referee just said we had a not rolling here, sides back there. So there's been two back-to-back penalty advantages. The captain chose the closer to the goal line penalty. But with that, that's now two penalties back-to-back in the red zone again. So she's going to talk to the team.
Looks like we're bringing it back here for the not rolling on Stanford's end, and GCU have opted for a scrum. We do have new front row coming in here, so this could change the dynamic.
Committed 2 penalties, okay? Yellow card territory, let's clean it up.
And we just hear from the
Okay,
referee.
so it's a little bit clipped there. I'll play it one more time, see if you can hear what she's saying. And again, I transcribed this for us to read in a second.
Thank you. Scrum.
Looks like we're bringing it back here for the not rolling on Stanford's end, and GCU have opted for a scrum. We do have new front row coming in here, so this could change the dynamic.
Committed 2 penalties, okay? Yellow card territory, let's clean it up.
And we just hear from the referee saying yellow card territory. There have been a lot of breakdown
So
penalties.
this is an interesting combination of the formal and informal because we'd already been at that formal level before. So she'd already had the time off warning of the next if this trend continues, there'll be a yellow card. Time has passed, so the pressure lessened on that. But now we're at another time where there's been 2 penalties in a row. So again, the referee is warning them, hey, we had cleaned up our behavior some, but you just committed 2 penalties back to back. We're back at yellow card territory. Let's clean it up. So again, the referee was not the most pleased at how she phrased this at this particular time, but in general, it's showing that time can help ease the pressure, but you still have to hold your standard. So they had a little bit of wiggle room. They had 2 more chances. So they had some time to be able to infringe without being immediately yellow carded. But now they're reminded of, you still have this warning. You've still given away a lot of penalties within the 22 in this game. You need to change it or there's going to be a yellow card. So with that, I'm trying to remember where I put that slide. Sorry. There it is. So our buckets have some small holes. With time, pressure ease away from the next one is a red. The next one is a card. So it's again why we don't want to back ourselves in the corner of the next one's a card. Because if I have a penalty if I have a trend and have that conversation at 10 minutes into the game, the next penalty is 30 minutes later. Did that trend really continue? There's 30 minutes in between those penalties. So if you are looking at trends specifically, looking for penalties in close succession to each other. So if you have 3 penalties in a row, that's a trend. If you have 20 minutes before you have another penalty, some time has elapsed. So maybe not that next one is, but if they have 2 in a row, we're going to card now. So with some time, it can take some pressure away, re-warn them if you're still in the mindset of, okay, some time has passed, we don't have the next one as a card, but we've now had 2, we're back at that next one as a card. That was a little bit confusing. Is there questions on that? In general, time can help ease pressure. Instead of always adding to the bucket, it can be coming away just a little bit. So you have your 5 buckets. Every penalty you call adds into that bucket. If you manage with your words instead of having your whistle, you can avoid adding into that bucket. If you play advantage for a penalty that would go into the bucket, that does still go into it. That one can be tricky. And that's what we just saw with this last one. There's 2 back-to-back penalty advantages, but the referee brought both those penalties into the conversation of the trend. So even if you're not specifically blowing your whistle, if you're saying out loud and making it known to the players and to the audience that you saw that penalty and something's going to happen from it, either a penalty kick or, advantage gain if they're able to do it, those fall into those buckets. Those are adding into the escalation process. So again, think if you're at yellow card warning territory and you saw a tackle that could be marginally high, can you manage it with your words? Or is that a high tackle that is continuing the trend and you need a yellow card? So be aware of where you're at. It should jump out to you if you need to yellow card it, which is the last thing that we're going to talk about, is getting to the yellow cards. This was in my game of this weekend. And some context is I had given an informal warning as we're running back to kickoff about high tackles. So kind of both high tackles and penalties within the 22. As we had 2 penalties earlier. So I talked to her about it because I saw 2 for me as a trend, especially because they're pretty close. And now we get to this. 42. Let's back just a little bit. So I'd given the informal warning, but we're going to watch what happens in this next 2 minutes of play.
Before being wrestled to ground. And Gargiulo, lovely little footwork, and then gets her hands free on the backside of that tackle to her prop Espindola. There is a penalty there. There are some tired bodies on the floor.
Penalty there for the high tackle. We're starting to see Eckert recognizing the fact that every Cal Poly player is a hard runner, so they're just holding their feet and keeping their connection on the defensive line. They're not really applying a lot of pressure now.
And Gargiulo drives towards the line, spinning. Does she get there? No signal. The ball will come back for the Mustangs. They're going to look to shift it. Goes to deck, and there's a tackle around the collar. That will likely be a card and a conversation.
Yeah, given this is now the third warning for the high tackle, this is not necessarily a symptom of like the dangerousness from this player, but because the team has received 3 warnings, she will just be the first to go.
Okay, so kind of as the announcers were saying, and in general, I had warned them already on both high tackles and tackles within like negative play within the 22. So at their informal warning, they just gave away a high tackle penalty advantage for not being back 10, and now this high tackle. So when I had that conversation with the captain, I told her, we had talked earlier, we just had 3 penalties in a row. With that high tackle, she is leaving. Also important context for this is number 14. So the player that I just carded had been one of the penalties I called earlier. So this is an individual player trend of she has now had 2 high tackles within the 22. Ironically, against the same player, they're number 9, which my AR said number 9 should just be taller. But besides that, in general, 14 had 2 tackles on the shoulder as White is having scoring opportunities. I had talked to the captain about high tackles and penalties within the 22. And then most recently, I just had 2 back-to-back penalties than this high tackle. An interesting thing here that I talked about with my coach is, was this high tackle in and of itself a yellow card? Like, did I need the escalation process for this? For me, it just made my decision easier. Like, we can show the tackle one more time.
They're going to look to shift it. Goes to deck, and there's a tackle
it's
around the
pretty
collar.
direct contact to the neck. I think most people, this tackle by itself could be a yellow. So I could have just saved myself from the repeat infringement conversation if I wanted to, but that had been what had just been in my mind, because it's a goal of mine to be working on right now of repeat infringements. I'd warned the captain, we just had, this is the 3rd penalty. We talked about both in the 22 high tackles. It's the same player. For me, that hits 3 different buckets. Easy yellow card. The hard thing about this yellow card is I'm carding the team that is down 0-50 right before halftime. So that context made me not feel good, but I didn't have any choices. I gave the players a chance to change the behavior. They did not. This player specifically did not. So she's leaving the field. And I believe that is all that I have for y'all. So
Hey, thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation, Katie.
thank you.
So let's take the momentum off the trends and recognition into Saturday. And if we are there and have a strong showing, we'll have, I imagine Joe Seven will be there most of the day. I'll be there, Mike Lawrenson, some of our higher level people will be there, more experienced people. Let's kind of sit together and let's watch some of the games, and let's talk about the trends and just because this does come, it was a lot of information, and it does come with experience. It's definitely a skill you have to develop. But it's one you can develop without having to referee. You can do it ARing, you can do it watching rugby, you can do it sitting around. It's just a good habit to like start memorizing penalties and seeing what they're for. And if you don't have to do that when you're 0-2 debt and running around chasing people around in a park with a whistle. You can do it from the sidelines and in the stadium. So if we go into this weekend with all these finals, yeah, it's a great opportunity to kind of do some deliberate practice and sit with some people and talk about it. Does anyone have any other topics they'd like to talk about on the meeting? Great. Thank you all for joining it. I think we're gonna maybe consider, I gotta talk with EC, but we may push back the meeting in June. Chris O'Malley wants to do a presentation, but he is going off to Amsterdam to referee sevens. So congratulations, Chris. That'd be a good opportunity for you, but look forward to that. As always, Angela and Dale will send out the meeting recap with this presentation and some of the videos. And hopefully we'll have a good number of people on the Advantage presentation tomorrow night. I think it's going to be a good one. Thank you again for taking time away from your family and your responsibilities and joining us for some development. I hope you guys got something out of it. Congratulations to all the referees who have done some national assignments. Good luck to you, Katie, for your WPL debut, and congratulations for everyone who got promoted and been working hard. I'm super proud of everyone on this call. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.